1,000,000 voices. Hi, I'm Katia Dopos, and this is 1,000,000 Voices, where inspirational speakers share their stories and champion organizations that are making a difference in the world. I'm so excited and honored to welcome our first guest here at 1,000,000 Voices. Royal photographer Chris Jackson has taken some of the most iconic photos of the British royal family in recent history. Chris heads up the royal coverage at Getty Images, and his photos have been published on the front pages of newspapers and magazines across the globe. He has won several special awards and has been named Royal Photographer of the Year multiple times. Hi Chris, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's so good to see you, even if it's from a distance. So I guess my first question is, how are you? How is your family doing? I mean, this has been a very difficult and strange year, to say the least, for everybody. And I guess with all the royal engagements being cancelled or postponed, it must have affected your work as well.
Yeah, it's well. Firstly, thank you, Katia, for having me on to this fantastic initiative. But it's it's certainly been a really interesting and unusual few months, and I just feel grateful that I suppose I've been lucky in the most. We've all been infected in so many different ways, but things have just started to pick up a little bit in terms of royal engagement. So that's been great to see the royals out and about. There's been a few engagements with the Duchess of Cambridge recently up in Sheffield, and the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall. So that's been fantastic. But of course, we had quite a few months where there was not a huge amount going on, lots of Zoom calls. The royals were still working away, but in a very different way. And I suppose we've all had to adjust and make changes to the way we operate. And it's been really interesting actually seeing how the royal family have adapted under this pressure and adapted to this new situation. Of course, they provide a lot of support and motivation for the British public and people around the world, and it's been great to see people like the Queen taking to things like Zoom. Of course, we see her taking part in her first Zoom call over lockdown. So it's been they've had to be flexible to adapt to new measures. For me personally, it's been pretty challenging, but I'm lucky to work for a company where they've been very dynamic and hugely supportive of the situation. We have, quite a few photographers who are all in the same situation. So we've all been working on various different projects, updating our websites, and also out and about. We've got some incredible news photographers who've been documenting the COVID pandemic around the world, and it's been amazing to watch their work drop in and look at their photos on the front page of the newspapers and magazines. So that's been really motivating, actually. I've been getting involved in a little bit of that. We certainly have to adapt in these kind of times. So I've been doing a little bit of news photography as well. So that's been a big change, but it is great to see things coming back, not to normal, but certainly royals out and about on engagement. So that's been fantastic.
And you have a toddler at home. So how has it been for you and your family?
Yeah, well, I think I've been incredibly lucky to have my son at home. He keeps us all on our toes, and he's he obviously has got a routine, and he doesn't really know what's going on clearly. So he's always making you smile in the morning, and it's been incredible actually to have that kind of that side to our lives, and it's been very special. So yeah, I consider ourselves incredibly lucky to have that. So it's been good.
You just mentioned your work for Getty Images. But let's go back in time a little bit, Chris. I'd like to understand how it all began for you. When did you know that you wanted to become a professional photographer? And what inspired you, motivated you as you were taking the first steps? And then later on when you started working full-time as a royal photographer?
That's a really good question, Kasia. I suppose it's really been an organic process. There wasn't any point right at the start where I said, this is where I want to be in sort of 10, 20 years time. I actually studied science A-levels. Then I went on to university in Cardiff and did a physiology and psychology degree. And whilst I enjoyed my degree, my real passion was taking photographs, and I worked with a student newspaper who are really fantastic actually in Cardiff, called the Getty, which means free speech in Welsh. And they were a fantastic team, and what it really introduced me to was the working world of photography. I'd get sent off on various assignments around the city, and I'd have to produce photographs and submit them for the paper. And it was great to see these images published, and it was my first sort of opportunity to see my images published weekly, and that was a real buzz, and I think it's something that's never really gone away. I cleaned out the cellar in my student house, and I set up a darkroom. And I used to sort of sneak off and develop photos, and that's where I sort of discovered the creativity behind, developing black and white photographs, dodging and burning, and really discovering it through trial and error and kind of teaching myself. And I was lucky that I did work in that space. Of course, we all work in digital these days, and things have changed. But I really enjoyed my time developing photos, and how you could be so creative behind that. And my flatmates thought I was very weird going off and developing photos the whole time, but it really ignited my passion for photography. And when I finished my degree, I was in a sort of a bit of a quandary, because I was passionate about photography, but at the same time I thought maybe I should go and get a sensible job in the city. What I thought I'd do is I'd go and spend as much time with photographers as I could, learn as much as I could about the industry. So I went off and did work experience with lots of different photographers, from portraiture to wildlife photographers to different agencies like Reuters and PA. And I spent some time talking to as many people as I could. And I thought, wow, this is something I want to do. I'm really passionate about it. Let's give it a shot. And of course, I had student debts and things like that, so I couldn't just become a photographer. So I was lucky to get a job at Getty Images, but I wasn't not as a photographer. I thought, where can I go and work? What's a great company to go and work for in the photography arena? And Getty certainly stood out for me, and I got a job with them, and I got another loan, bought some camera equipment when I was working at Getty Images as an account executive. And I shot for them whenever I could, sort of around my day job. It could be a protest at the weekend. It could be some personal projects. And I shot over this year. And eventually, after a lot of pushing, they gave me a job as a staff photographer. And I think that was about sort of 18 years ago now, which feels like quite a long time ago. But and then I suppose from that point on, the royal job developed organically. I got sent on a couple of royal tours, and I really enjoyed everything that they represented, the travel, the working for these incredible people who are changing the world. And it was a real buzz to see your pictures in the newspapers and magazines, and it really encompassed everything I loved about photography. And that kind of role developed from that point, and eventually sort of morphed into the role of royal photographer.
You also worked as a photojournalist. You traveled all around the world on assignments, covering stories like the drought in Africa in 2006, the inauguration of Pope Benedict XVI, the Venice Film Festival. So there is a variety, Chris, of issues and topics and events that you have covered. So tell us a little bit more about your experience working as a photojournalist, and also how did this experience influence your work as a royal photographer? Yeah,
definitely. And that's, I suppose, one of the special things about working for Getty is, as a staff photographer, you get the opportunity to work across a diverse cross-section of photography. Generally, most people specialise, be it in news, entertainment, golf, tennis, whatever your speciality is. And I'm lucky to work with some incredible colleagues who are so passionate about what they do. But I think at the start of my career, I did get sort of assigned to quite a few different areas and assignments, and that variety was really special. And I suppose it was incredibly important to shape your skills as a photographer and your experiences. And I've had lucky enough to have some incredible adventures over the years. You mentioned drought in Africa, and that was challenging, eye-opening, terrible at times, but also it was wonderful to know that your pictures were hopefully making a bit of a difference by raising awareness of the situation. As someone who works under the entertainment banner at Getty Images, I also work a lot in the entertainment industry, so it could have been film festivals, portraiture, and a cross section of areas. And like I say, it does really expand your skill set, and I think that's important. And certainly working in the area I work in now, where you find yourself in many different situations. It could be from a technical perspective, lighting wise, on royal tour with various members of the royal family around the world. You can't often control the situations you're in or how you light your subject, and so that diverse background and having been on those various assignments before, I think they really help prepare you for a role that is essentially quite diverse. And I suppose that's one of the USPs about the royal job, is that you're quite often, occasionally you are in control of your situation, but sometimes and most of the time you're not, and that's what makes it so exciting, the unpredictability and the excitement of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. But also it means you have to be flexible, and you're not always going to have the perfect light, but you have to work with it in the way you can and make the best out of that situation. You could be on a royal tour in the hot Sydney sunshine, and if you were a portrait photographer, you'd wait till the perfect light at sort of 6 p.m. or early in the morning. But on a royal tour, you don't get that kind of control. So yeah, that background, I suppose, really helps in this role I find myself in now.
It's so interesting. And I think another fascinating aspect of your work, Chris, is that we are witnessing history through your photos, through your lenses. You have captured some of the most iconic moments of the British royal family in recent history. And I think, now actually it's a good time to mention your book. And I have it here with me. I hope everyone can see. So I'm just going to show. It's called Modern Monarchy. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. By the way, I invite everyone who is watching us right now to do two things. First, get the book. You can get it online. It's a wonderful gift. Christmas is just around the corner. And in fact, I gave one copy to my parents.
Was that all the way to Brazil, or?
No, when they were visiting, and they were very pleased. The book had your signature,
That's
so
amazing.
They were very happy.
That's just to say very quickly, that's actually one of the special things, and I absolutely love it. It's to see people all around the world, and social media really is a great medium to show you people reading it around the world, and that is incredible. That's a real buzz. Sorry, Katy, I interrupted.
No, of course. I mean, actually, this is what I was going to say. First, get the book, and the second thing is follow Chris on social media. I think we all need some cheering up these days, and if you follow Chris, you're gonna see wonderful stories, beautiful pictures, and it will add color and joy to your life. So there you go. As you can tell, Chris, I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
But coming back to the book, I mean, it is really a great book. And also the way that you have organized into different chapters and themes that tell a story of what it means to be a member of the British royal family today. And also, of course, it gives an insight into your work as a royal photographer, Chris. But I guess my question is, because you just mentioned the variety of engagements, and the book illustrates that very well. So how do you prepare, Chris, for all these different engagements, from the more formal occasions like Trooping the Colour, for instance, to portraits, like the beautiful commemorative pictures you took of Prince Charles' 70th birthday, but also those unscripted, candid, special moments that you capture so beautifully, and people all over the world get so excited by those pictures. So how do you make sure, Chris, that you are ready and you don't miss a shot, particularly those unscripted moments?
Wow. Well, firstly, Katy, that's really kind. Thanks for your kind words. But yeah, I think. Firstly, I think photographing the royals is really special, and it's a unique little area of photography. What I love about it is the fact that you are, like you mentioned, creating a sort of historic archive that people will hopefully look back on in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, maybe even a century's time. And I suppose that is something that makes it really special. It really excites me, if you're photographing the birth of Prince George or a royal wedding or anything like that. I myself look back on previous photographs. We've got this incredible archive at Getty Images, the Hulton archive, and I've been there quite a few times and looked at these historic, some of them are even glass slides, photographs from sort of 100 years ago, and it makes you realise, I suppose, the importance of creating this archive and this legacy, and that's one of the things I find really exciting about this area. It's and it's what I also love about it is the variety, the lovely mix of formal shots and of ceremony and tradition, and then you mix that up with some of the more relaxed moments, and like you say, it's all part of the bigger picture, and it's what make the royal family. And how do you prepare for that? Well, I think that's it. The answer's in the question. You've got to be prepared. I've missed so many pictures, and hopefully I've managed to capture a small proportion of those, and it is on the day, it's everything coming together in the right way, the weather, the light, and some days it does and some days it doesn't. And I suppose that's excitement of the job. You've got to throw in a percentage of luck, and that's what makes it exciting, that element that isn't in your control. But I suppose the best way to increase your chances and to maximize your luck is to be prepared, and every engagement is different, every job is different, from a formal portrait to a royal tour, and it involves making sure, from the absolute basics, to making sure your cameras are charged, making sure you've got the right lenses. You've got to be there to take the picture, and travel forms such an important part of my job. I often think, I'd probably be a better travel agent than I would a photographer, because I spend so much time making sure I'm in the right place to take those photographs, and it can involve early mornings, flying around the world, obviously not recently. But yeah, travel is such an integral part of the job, and being there to take that photo is key. And often you find engagements clashing, and you have to make important decisions, and you don't quite know where the pictures are going to be. So, it's an exciting, challenging, energetic world, and you have to kind of be sort of on the ball, I suppose. And you miss photos sometimes, and sometimes you manage to get those, and it's a real buzz when that all comes together.
That's so interesting. And I guess what makes it even more fascinating for people is that they are a family, after all. And so you see all these intimate moments as well, even the portraits, Prince Charles' 70th birthday, you see him, he's celebrating with his grandchildren. And also these spontaneous, those magical moments, like Prince George looking at the bubbles, for instance. I think these pictures, they capture the imagination of the public. I think people get excited about them, and it must be so rewarding for you, Chris, when you know that you got that shot, and in a matter of minutes, seconds these days, your photos are published on the front pages of newspapers and magazines all around the world.
Yeah, it says, definitely, I know you kind of get this feeling when you've taken a good photograph, and you can feel it, it's a buzz, and you sometimes don't have to even look on the back of the camera. You just know if you've got that shot. Equally, if you've missed it as well. But it is a real buzz, and it shows unscripted moments that I really enjoy capturing, and I suppose they mean more to me. Like you've mentioned a few, I love, take for example, from a few years ago now, but Princess Charlotte's christening, and you would of course think that on the day that the picture would be Princess Charlotte in her Honiton white christening gown. But for me, the shot that stood out on the day was Prince George peering into the pram on his tiptoes, to capture a glimpse of his younger sister. And that unscripted, you could never have predicted that on the morning, but it's a picture that really, generates some emotion in the viewer, and people smile, they go, that's incredibly sweet. It's something that generates a response, and if you've sort of achieved that, you've made someone smile, you've made someone kind of think, then I think as a photographer you've probably achieved your goal. But yeah, it's that unpredictability which is really exciting, but it means you have to always be aware of what's going on, try and be one step ahead of what's going to happen. Are they going to walk into that light over there? Are they going to speak to that person? what's going to happen when this happens. You have to try and be one step ahead of proceedings. Otherwise, they happen and you're one step behind, and you miss the photo. So, that is a really important skill to have. And I think it's key. But it's what makes the job exciting, and I love it.
And how would you say, Chris, is a typical day of a royal photographer, if there is any?
Well, at the moment, there's certainly no typical days, but and generally there's no typical days. I say that though, one of the nice things about the job is it's a lot of regularity, but interspersed with new things. So if that makes any sense, what I mean is, the royal diary is formed up of these events that happen every year, generally, apart from this year, for obvious reasons. But things like Royal Ascot, Trooping the Colour, as you've mentioned, the Garter ceremony. And these occasions have happened, for tens, if not hundreds of years. And that ceremony and the regularity means that you do get a sort of familiar feeling year after year, and you know what time to get there, you know where to park, you know how the event's going to pan out, where the best place to be is, and that's really nice. And that experience over the years improves your skills as a royal photographer. But of course, in between these things, unexpected, new, unpredictable events. There's weddings, there's christenings, there's charity events, there's polo matches. So many things that go on in between these regular events where you have to sort of be a bit more on your toes. You're learning as you're going along, and that's what makes it really exciting. You throw all these things into the mix, and in a normal year, it certainly keeps you on your toes.
And what about the royal tours? I mean, it must be extraordinary.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't even mention royal tours, and they form such an important part of what you do, and they're certainly the most challenging, but also the most enjoyable part of the job. And I'm so lucky to have been to some incredible places over the years, from like the Galapagos Islands to Japan, India, Africa, all around the world, and with all different members of the royal family. And every different member of the royal family requires a sort of different approach. They have a different style of royal tour. When the Queen was travelling, it would be a couple of engagements a day. The Prince of Wales will be hot-footing it round with sort of 8 engagements every day, trying to see as many people as he can. And every tour, every different royal takes a different approach, and it's really exciting. And it's a really fun part of the job, but also it can be pretty tiring. A lot of jet lag flying around the world.
And I guess it must be quite challenging to prepare for a royal tour, because they can have so many different assignments in one single day and go to so many different places in the morning, afternoon, evening. Yeah. And I guess you don't have much time, Chris, to visit the venues in advance, right? So how do you prepare? Do you find that you have to improvise a lot?
Totally. Well, I think, it's, again, as I mentioned, it's a lot of it is working sort of on the fly, being really flexible. You might arrive in a venue. Back in the UK, we probably would have had time to do a recce or have a look around. I can figure out what's going on. On royal tour, you're bouncing around from engagement to engagement, and things happen, unexpected moments, and you have to be prepared for that. And sometimes the pace on these royal tours can be pretty punishing. Quite often you occasionally travel with the royals. Sometimes you have to advance them on commercial planes, which can mean some very, very, very early mornings to make sure you're there in time, late nights. So yeah, and that is part of the fun, getting around, making sure you're in the right place at the right time. Planes get cancelled, buses get punctures, it's all part of the fun of being on royal tour. But you meet some incredible people. A lot of these engagements are tied in with kind of philanthropic charitable endeavours that the royal family are particularly interested in. Often, and it's pretty weird to think about at the moment, but there will be a royal walkabout where the royals get to meet as many members of the public as possible, and there's been some pretty epic ones of those in the past where you get thousands of people turning out to try and catch a glimpse of the royals, and that's pretty exciting, but poses its own challenges. And there's so many different facets to a royal tour, and so much unpredictability, and every single one is different. Of course, we visit places like Canada, Australia, New Zealand a huge amount, and that is lovely because you get to know different areas and different cities within these countries, and that's lovely to sort of build up a relationship with these countries, and that's great. So it's that's very special. And occasionally we go to new and incredible places that I've never been to before. Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, really kind of exciting destinations. So it's certainly always good fun.
And most of the time you're carrying heavy equipment with you. There is a great behind-the-scenes video of you trekking in Nepal when Prince Harry visited the country.
And we're just trekking up to a village up in the foothills of the Himalayas where we're going to be spending the night. I won't lie, the trek was a little bit harder than we anticipated, especially carrying all this equipment.
And that must have been a pretty special trip, because also your photos, I mean, they captured magical moments with people lining up to welcome Prince Harry. And I guess it must be also fascinating for you, Chris, to be able to visit so many different countries and see all these beautiful places and meet different people.
Yeah, and like I said, the different members of the royal family, different kinds of royal tours, and actually those kind of physical ones, like you mentioned the Harry trip to Nepal, and that was amazing. I'll absolutely never forget that. I mean, for me personally, Nepal is a bucket list place to go to, and it was a year after the devastating earthquake that hit Kathmandu, and I think it was really important to Prince Harry then to visit as many people who've been affected as possible, and he actually stayed on after the royal tour for a couple of weeks to do some rebuilding work with Operation Rubicon. But that was incredible. And I think you're talking about a video where we trekked up to a small village in the foothills of the Himalayas, and carrying all the camera equipment. I love those kind of physical side to royal tours like that, and he got such a warm welcome. And of course in Nepal you're given garlands when you arrive in the village, and Prince Harry was literally weighed down by hundreds of garlands, and they're just such a warm and welcoming people in Nepal, and it was just very special to go up to that village and spend the night there in tents. We looked after by the Gurkhas, and that was, these are just the special things you occasionally get to experience on royal tours, and it's amazing. And hopefully you give a flavour of what's going on back home with your images.